I'm Barry Kislowitz, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Lenses, a podcast designed for busy leaders in 15-minute increments. If you're a head of school, principal, Rosh Yeshiva, anyone else who wants to improve and enhance Jewish day school education, you've come to the right place. This episode, for the first time, we have a guest, so you won't just be hearing from me, but you'll be hearing from Jane Taubenfeld Cohen, our inaugural guest on this podcast, who we've chosen not only because of her tremendous experience as a head of school, or her many recognitions and prizes along the way, or her directing the YU School Partnership, but perhaps most importantly, from my perspective, because Jane is a coach and is the coach's coach. Any of us who are out there doing work with Jewish day school leaders, it's Jane that we turn to when we have a challenge. And so I couldn't think of anyone better to turn to discuss a few challenges. Again, hopefully what Jane says, what I say will ring a bell, be interesting. We'd love to hear from you. If you agree, disagree, you can find me on LinkedIn, at our Substack Leadership Lenses, or at the website kislowitzconsulting.com. Jane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful intro.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And it's an intro that's a little bit of repayment, perhaps, for the many hours of guidance and coaching that you've given me over the many years. And what I'd love to do to get right into it for our listeners is throw a challenge at you that may come up fairly often for heads of school. Hear your thoughts, and we can bat it around together and see what we come to. Hopefully, we'll produce something that's helpful. So,
can we be a little true to form, and I can also ask you questions along the way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. With pleasure.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take a head of school. And imagine this head of school has 3 or 4 divisions. It's a relatively large school, and they've established a senior leadership team. So on that team, they might have 2 or 3 principals, a CFO, an operations person, a school advancement person. They get together once a week. And the head of school's issue is that whenever this team gets together, they want to discuss what's happening tomorrow, what the burning issue is, what's just come up. And every time the head tries to pull them into some sort of broader perspective, let's think strategy, let's go to the balcony, they have no interest and no patience.
I've never heard that scenario before. Just kidding. That scenario comes up a lot, and often teams actually resent the head of school saying, let's go up on the balcony, or can we look at the big picture? They actually resent that because they feel like their time is so important and they're so rushed and they have so many things on their to-do list. And you and I know that if you don't spend the time doing the balcony stuff, your school doesn't move forward. And the list just keeps growing because there's never a day when there's not a to-do list that's longer than the day, right? Never of those days. So I guess we can talk about what you would do also. What I would do in that situation is I would ask the head of school if he or she has had an honest conversation about this, a direct, honest conversation without beating around the bush, saying, I'm struggling with something and I need your help. And what I'm struggling with is that I really believe that we should be moving the school forward and we should be thinking big picture. I'm happy to set aside specific times in our week, which a lot of heads have started to do, where they have once a month a balcony meeting is what some people call it, or once a month a big picture meeting. Or we have an hour and a half together. We spend 45 minutes on the to-do list and 45 minutes on something bigger picture, some learning together or something like that. What are some things that you've tried?
So definitely some similar ideas. And I actually go back to my own experience as a head of school. I used to have a balcony meeting, literally called that, about once every 4 to 6 weeks, where we tried to spend a couple hours, bring in dinner for the leadership team, and really get deeper into issues. But the other piece that I've seen recently written about is the idea that time is finite, but energy is not. So it's not just about how your team manages their time, it's about how you help them manage their energy and their perspective. And what I love about what you said is that when the head gets vulnerable and says, "Hey, I'm struggling with something," that shifts the dynamic because you usually have the others in the room thinking, well, the head's like off, having fancy lunches with donors. They're the boss. That they don't get it. They don't remember what it's like to be in the trenches. And a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way to shifting that.
Let me add to what you're saying because I think the other thing that vulnerability does is it gives a sense that we're all in it together. It takes away the we and they of a leadership team where it's the head and the rest of the team or the educators and the rest of the team, whatever it is. As soon as you get vulnerable and you say, we have a problem that we're going to solve together, and you actually listen and hear, and they listen and hear, you're now sitting on the same side of the table looking at the problem instead of on opposite sides. And that in and of itself is a big picture experience. So
Mhm.
you're having a big picture experience while discussing your big picture, your need to look at the big picture. And I love consistency, so that's a really important way to look at it and also to really show people that you hear them, that they feel rushed and that they feel like they have a lot to do. And sometimes these kinds of conversations happen better starting in the summer months or as soon as school's over, when people
Mhm.
don't have that long list and you actually set the plan for the future together and you set the norms for how it's going to work.
Do
People
you
love
ever?
actually end up loving the learning from it. They do, but it takes a while to get there.
Right. My sense is that a lot of administrators are really in their brainstem for a lot of the day because it's crisis after crisis. And we know kids as young as two can't learn when they're in their brainstem. And the same thing's true for principals. So if we can't get them out of there, we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And I think acknowledging that sometimes we are the ones, the heads are the ones who have the expectations that cause those to-do lists. And so you're in this vicious cycle of having high expectations, wanting to meet those expectations, wanting what's best for the kids, and not always knowing that sometimes stepping outside of that is what is best for the kids and best for the teachers and best for the school.
Okay, so I think you just hit on something that's core. I've struggled with it on both ends of it, and I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into you're ahead of school. You probably got there because you had really high expectations of yourself. You're, probably a very hard worker. You've excelled in many ways. You've been promoted to this position. And now you've got a group of people working for you at the senior level who may be very similar. So, how do you balance your own high expectations of yourself, of them, with keeping the team healthy?
There's so many ways that I think about those things. I'll start with how I thought about it as a head of school. My own coach, Larry Levine, used to say to me, just because you're ready to move on doesn't mean they are. And so having some perspective taking when you're sitting on a team and understanding where people are coming from. The other piece to this is the whole Team One concept, which comes, I think, originally from Lencioni, or maybe he took it from somebody else. I'm not sure, but the idea that our we're in this team together, and our loyalty is to this team, and building that team and spending the time building that team is what's great for the school, and what's important for our leadership as heads is investing in that team. And so sometimes we have to step away from our own expectations. And we have to say that actually my expectations might be getting in the way of this team moving forward. And maybe I have to stop and listen to what they're saying and hear because they might actually have a better way of getting there than I am thinking of in this moment. And I'm sometimes even stuck in this moment because it worked for me. And so all of that self-reflection, and some people can do self-reflection sort of while they're working, and some people have to take time to reflect and to actually stop themselves. Some people journal, some people talk to their coaches, some people, whatever, whomever they talk to about it, to really see how am I a part of this problem? How am I creating the circumstances in which these people feel a need to either guess what the teacher wants, or in this case, the head of school wants, or to do it my way, even if my way might not be the best way.
Right. So I love that. I love the idea of living in the system, which the head is, and also trying to see the system at the same time. I reference the Matrix a lot, which is getting less and less relevant as I get older and the people I'm coaching get younger. But I think that you have to be able to see both levels. And at the same time, I wonder if you can do that as a head before you've learned to give yourself that grace.
I think people are different, and sometimes people learn through what they give someone else and then stopping and someone saying, "Hey, I wonder what that would be like if you did the same for yourself." I know all the literature about how you have to take care of yourself first. I think I'm not sure there's an order. I'm not sure everyone's the same. We can be really, really giving people and not give to ourselves until somebody stops us and says, "Hey, what would it be like if you gave yourself that grace?" Or what would it be like if you took the time yourself to reflect on this? My one of my dear friends who was a role model for me as a head of school is Cheryl Finkel. And she used to
Mhm.
say every head of school needs a coach and a therapist. You need to be able to talk things through and to work out your own stuff. I'm sure you've heard me say that if I ever write a book, it's going to be called My Childhood, My Leadership, because so much of who we are plays out in our leadership, and being kind and thinking of other people sometimes is a first step.
Absolutely. So I love that you said that. I'm actually in the middle of writing a Substack about when one of my earliest mentors told a cohort that I was in that you must get a therapist before you finish rabbinical school and before you finish graduate school. Because if you don't, then you're just going to put out all your stuff on whoever it is you're working with. He was very right. I think it probably took me 2 decades to realize it, but he was very, very
Well,
right.
that's the thing, Barry. We're like all works in progress. And the day that we stop learning, both about what we do and who we are doing that work, is the day we should stop doing it, right? There's always something new to learn. And sometimes I can't tell you how many times I'll say to myself, "Whoa, I wish I had thought of that sooner. I wish I had been thinking about this. I wish I had read this, or I wish I had talked to somebody about this earlier." All of which influences how we show up.
Absolutely. Let me ask you one question. We'll close on this, and then we're actually going to do this as a two-part episode. So we'll do another dilemma in a minute. But to ask you this question, what's the most memorable thing or most inspiring thing that someone you've coached has said to you?
The most memorable. I don't think there is a most. Honestly, I don't think there's a most because I coach the way I taught and hopefully the way I led. I hope maybe some people who I've led can comment on this, um, which is I'm completely in the moment that I'm in terms of who you are and who's sitting in front of me. So it's almost like every single person I've ever coached has done something memorable, and and they're also different. I can't. The word most is what's throwing me. There are lots and lots of memorable things that have happened. Some of which is when I think when people say to me, "I was about to do X." And then I started to breathe differently, or I started to think differently. I brought myself back above the line. Any of those things. Anytime somebody shows self-reflection and growth, I get excited. Anytime somebody says, I've integrated two different thoughts and they've come to this place where I'm starting to think differently about the way I lead, all of that is exciting to me. My big thing is actually not what's memorable. It's my job is to believe in you as much as you believe in yourself. And even when you don't believe in yourself, for me to show you that you're worth believing in. And that's my job. And if I can keep doing that, then it's about what you remember, not what I remember.
Wow. Okay. That I'm just going to grab a tissue for a second because that is very touching. And I'm sure you get a lot of, hey, I was about to do this and I asked myself, well, what would Jane say right now? And I was able to take a step back. And I think that it's beyond what you even remember. As you were saying that, I was thinking it's about what integrates into you. So you've had this experience, you had this conversation, you come out different on the other end. You may not even remember what was said, but if you're really in it, you come out different on the other end and you can apply that. So we're going to take a quick intermission for now. For you listening, it'll be a 1 week intermission, but for Jane and I, it'll be just a couple seconds. We'll wrap up this episode. As always, would love to hear what you have to say. LinkedIn, Barry Kislowitz, Substack, Leadership Lenses, KislowitzConsulting.com. Any way you want to reach us, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, whatever works for you. Hopefully you found this interesting and would love to hear your perspective.